Ukraine's $155 million ghost attack stuns Russia as lone MiG-29 obliterates strategic dam. Today, Ukraine executed a precision deception strike that resulted in nearly $155 million in Russian losses. It involved a 40-year-old MiG-29, a pair of American JDAM-ER glide bombs, and a swarm of low-cost Decoy drones. Each drone cost roughly $400 to tear open a strategic dam and collapse an entire command sector. The operation combined terrain masking, radar manipulation, and multi-axis drone saturation tactics. The goal was to lure Russia's air defenses into emptying their magazines before the real strike even began. What follows is the full sequence: how a single pilot and a handful of improvised systems broke a Russian stronghold. It triggered a cascading defeat. Now the story begins from the first moment of action. At 3:40 a.m., 300 feet above the Kurs hills, a Russian 57E6 missile tore past an airborne object, missing by only meters. A 32-year-old Ukrainian MiG-29 pilot was pulling nearly 6 Gs in an aging Soviet jet as his threat warning panel lit up like a Christmas display. A Russian Pantsir S-1 system had just locked on. He had only a split-second window to perform a loft bomb maneuver to buy enough altitude for the JDAM-ER bombs. One mistake meant death. One success meant Russian defenses would be forced into collapse. The margin for error was zero. This decisive moment traced its origins to a plan conceived 34 days earlier. A temporary Russian steel patch had cracked open a small hole in the Grafavka Dam. Ukrainian engineers spent that time assembling a layered deception strategy built around unconventional tools. At 3 a.m., the MiG-29 roared down the runway. Old, loud, and never designed for nighttime precision runs, the jet carried 2 GBU-62 JDAM-ER glide bombs. These were American kits retrofitted to Soviet pylons using a custom Ukrainian-built interface. The adaptation was crude, but effective. Engineers compared it to plugging a new smartphone into an antique appliance and still getting reliable performance. Each JDAM-ER could glide out to roughly 45 miles. This allowed the pilot to release them while staying outside the primary kill zones, at least in theory. But the Russians had anticipated standoff attacks. Guarding the dam was a Pantsir S-1 short-range air defense system and a Nebo-M long-range radar array. The Nebo-M could detect extremely small radar signatures and identify high-altitude aircraft quickly. That meant if the MiG flew high, Russian radars would spot him instantly. If he flew low, the Pantsir optical sensors could acquire him. The solution depended on deception. The plan relied on 20 low-cost decoy drones, each costing about $400. By 3:30 a.m., the MiG hugged the terrain at only 130 feet, flying so low he was practically inside the tree line. Those UAVs launched from a concealed site roughly 30 miles from the dam. These drones carried radar reflectors to amplify their signatures. They were not designed to attack. Their sole purpose was to act as false echoes, mimicking the radar return of fighter aircraft. As they flew in a tight formation from the northeast, their collective electronic signature fooled Russian sensors into believing they were facing a massed Ukrainian airstrike. By 3:38 a.m., the MiG pilot watched the drone formation on his data link. Calm but gripping his stick with white-knuckled intensity, he issued one word over an encrypted channel: ignite. 20 drones activated small repeaters, blasting out amplified signatures. This tricked Russian radar operators into seeing a full squadron of inbound fighters. Inside the Pantsir command truck, a young Russian operator suddenly witnessed 20 fast-moving targets appear out of nowhere. Training overtook confusion, saturation attack, immediate engagement. The Pantsir turret snapped toward the Phantom formation, and its 30mm cannons opened fire at 5,000 rounds per minute. The first several drones were shredded instantly, yet destruction was part of the Ukrainian design. The surviving drones scattered in programmed evasive maneuvers. The Pantsir AI struggled to track so many moving signals. The operator panicked and escalated to missile launches. The first 57E6 flew out at Mach 3, destroying a drone worth less than a family appliance. 2 more missiles followed. These wasted intercepts saved the MiG and made the loft bombing window possible. As the pilot flew 20 miles south of the engagement zone, the flashes of explosions illuminated the clouds ahead. He counted them. 1, 2, 3. Each one meant fewer missiles available to shoot him down. His wingmen, these expendable drones, were dying exactly as planned. The decoys continued to draw fire. 10 drones fell, then 15. The final drone, Dart-20, executed a climb that mimicked the MiG's future bombing profile. The Pantsir obliterated it, and then silence returned. The Russians believed they had defeated a major attack. Their magazines were nearly empty, and their turret was overheated. They did not yet understand that they had failed the real test. When the last drone disappeared from the MiG's display, the stage was clear. The pilot advanced his throttle, but Ukraine had another layer. As the Russians reset their systems, a second wave of drones approached, but from the northwest this time. These were faster and programmed for complex maneuvers. Russia reacted again. 2 missiles destroyed the lead drones. Others were cut down by gunfire, but the starburst split of these UAVs further confused the algorithms, draining the final missiles from the Pantsir's ready rack. Out of the remaining drones, one clipped the dam's surface and crashed. Another skimmed the reservoir until a round destroyed it. A final pair climbed high and dove onto the Pantsir position. The Russian operator screamed for maximum elevation as the turret struggled to rotate upward. The hydraulics were strained and sluggish from continuous use, but these drones were not the real threat. They were the final distraction, because 4 miles to the south, the MiG began its attack run. The pilot shoved his throttle past the afterburner detente. The aircraft surged from 300 to 600 knots. He pulled back hard, climbing sharply out of the radar shadow. For the first time that night, the MiG revealed itself. Russian radar painted him instantly. The operator panicked and redirected the turret. With agonizing delay, he acquired a firing solution and launched his very last 57 E-6 missile. Inside the MiG, alarms blared. The missile was closing fast. The pilot needed 2 more seconds of climb to ensure the JDAMs would have enough kinetic energy to glide the full distance. Diving early would save him, but cause mission failure. He held the climb. 1 second, 2 seconds. At the apex, he released the JDAMs. Then he rolled inverted, dumping flares and chaff while pulling negative Gs. The missile streaked past the canopy, detonating late, its shockwave kicking the MiG sideways. Shrapnel tore into the tail but failed to disable the engines. The jet plunged back toward the dark valleys below, escaping radar view. Above him, the JDAM-ERs glided silently toward the dam. This entire decoy and deception sequence had cost Ukraine under $40,000 in expendable systems. Russia's defense response had already exceeded $10 million before a single bomb struck. By 3:42 a.m., Russian guards near the Grafavka Dam felt the night return to quiet. They believed the attack was over. They were unaware that 2 1000LB bombs were seconds away from impact. The JDAM-ERs struck the steel repair plate directly. Their fuses detonated instantly, vaporizing the patch. Water pressure did the rest. A torrent blasted through the breach at more than 9 million gallons per second. The spillway collapsed. The breach widened from 10 feet to 50 feet in seconds. Downstream, an estimated $140 million Russian hydropower and command facility flooded almost instantly. Communications equipment, servers, generators, and tactical control systems drowned. Officers inside were swept from their positions. Vehicles along the lower road, including the Pantsir S1, used throughout the battle, were capsized and dragged into the flood. Railways collapsed. Armor sank into the mud. Ammunition routes disappeared. Nearly 5,000 Russian troops lost resupply access for 9 days. Total vehicle and rail damage added another $5 million to the losses. What began as a clash between a lone pilot and a modern air defense system ended as a systemic Russian failure. Ukraine had used a Soviet-era fighter, improvised integration, inexpensive decoy drones, and the principle of reverse echo. This made a superior enemy fight ghosts and lose. Russia, despite massive resources, was defeated by misdirection, and the total Russian losses reached nearly $155 million, all triggered by one precision strike. In the aftermath, one question remains. How will Russia counter a strategy that forces its defenses to destroy themselves? That's your thoughts. Share with us and subscribe for more video like this.